Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Sarim Tovim, and Lila Tov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are at. Brandon and I are hoping that you guys are doing finer than frog's hair. My dad used to say that. I thought I would just start us out with something kind of funny. So, are you finer than frog's hair this morning?
Am I in? Are you talking to me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear
Hold
you now,
on.
yeah.
You are on camera. We're all good to go.
Awesome, awesome. I don't know
So,
why I can't see. Oh, there you are. That's probably because I was scrolled down too far.
I hate it when that happens. That
Yeah.
makes it easier. Well,
Uh,
I'm happy to have the few that are joining with us this morning, but go ahead. You were just getting ready to say something, I could tell.
well, I was gonna say I'm probably um gonna let you run with it a little bit today. And just have like
Fine.
a little vulnerable moment for myself right now. If y'all don't mind, and excuse me, I have a dip in. Um, uh, Man, these last couple of weeks have been really challenging. I know last weekend me and you did this, and I said these last 2 weeks, those previous 2 weeks were challenging, but this last week was challenging as well. And as things from my shadow side are coming up, I've come to realize a few things. And in that little exchange with me and uh, Daniel David, Daniel Fornes came on there and he was like, my mom's weed eating, guys. So if y'all hear that, I apologize. But he had said something about being hurt or whatever, and like immediately I responded, and I know he wasn't talking about the exchange with me and Daniel David. It was just being hurt in general. I immediately responded with like, ha ha ha, like I'm not hurt, dude. Well, I really was like just sitting yesterday, and marinating on everything. And I realized a couple of things that, like, one, and this is totally, totally okay, that yes, I still am a little hurt in some areas.
Sure.
There's some things that I haven't quite healed from. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because even us in the spiritual community, mystic community, whatever title or label or whatever anyone wants to put on it, I've noticed like we got to be careful because what I did yeah, I quit drinking and quit using drugs and everything like that. But I totally plunged myself so deep into spirituality that I was using that almost like the alcohol and the drugs. And I was not going in and really healing some things that really needed to be healed. And we think because it's spirituality that it's all good and gravy. That, well, it's spiritual. I'm learning. I'm not taking away or saying that none of my experiences were true or unreal or any of that. They were true. They were real. Revelations, man. They were true. They were real. But I had plunged myself so deep into spiritual seeking and everything that took over, where the drugs and the alcohol was, that had taken over and become that alcoholic drink or that drug, um, that dark side. And last night it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was just like, "Whoa, dude!" And I admit I got a little super down. And obviously we're meant to do this today because I actually private messaged you, and was like, "Carrie, can we not do this today? I'm really not feeling up to it." But you never saw it, so.
No, I didn't. I actually had to leave town for a little bit this morning very early so I could get back in time. And so, no, I wasn't even on Facebook. I got on very early this morning because I was up at 3 a.m. And then the internet went out on me. So even if I had, because I was at the house that I was house sitting for, and the internet went out. So even if you would have, I wouldn't have seen it. So I guess this was one of those kick in the butt kind of things. like, okay, Brandon, we need to do this. So I actually applaud you for your transparency, and I thank you for sharing that side, because what you just shared is really important and is a perfect segue for something that I wanted to talk to today about. And it was revelation that I received this morning. And you just like set it up perfectly. So I'm hoping that it will help you as well. And that maybe that's why we are meeting today. But before I get into, I love that. Renee said, yep, this session was meant to happen. Anyway, yes,
Uh,
I agree. I was honestly, just to let you know, I was dreading it yesterday because my energy has been really low, and it's been 3 weeks of a roller coaster ride for me as well. So I think many of us are going through this. But, okay, key is this is the best time when we do need to meet, because this is
yeah.
how we encourage one another, right? My pattern that I used to do in the past is I would totally hole up. I mean, I wouldn't talk to anybody. I would shut the doors, close the blinds, go into my cave, and just say, you know what, world, you figure your shit out while I'm figuring mine out. Okay, I don't need any more from you. I'm in my own wrestle right now, and that's how I used to deal with it. But I'm finding, and you probably are as well, is that we have beautiful people surrounding us that understand that we are all in this together.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, your wrestle is my wrestle, and my wrestle is your wrestle, and we are all going through this together. And so, when we can come together and say, hey, this is the real stuff. This is exactly what we are dealing with. These energies are coming in, it's causing things to surface, and it has to be that way. It has to be that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
before,
that's and I'll let you, but that's really was I love about this and was my heart desire in doing this is one, getting to the truth, letting us go through in layman's terms and not necessarily letter by letter of
right,
the original language, but it's just we as the body, man, we need to come together. I'm gonna try
yes, we
not to
do.
get him. I'm gonna try not to get emotional on this, but we need to have very real conversations, man,
Yes, we
and
do.
not sweep stuff under the rug and pretend like, oh, because I'm a pastor or because I'm shepherding people or whatever, that I got to put on a good face all the time. But we're all human beings, man. Right now, we are all spirits in these flesh suits, and we feel these things, and we need to let people know, like, it's okay. It's okay to express it. World's coming out from under you, but this is the only way that you can process this stuff. Your shadow has got to be dealt with, and we can go into substances, even spirituality, as I just mentioned. We can even plummet ourselves into spirituality and use that to mask the stuff that's going on in us. So that's my heart, is for us to have very real conversations.
I totally agree. That's actually why my heart was to open up a group on Facebook called the Stand 121, for people to come in and have a place where we can have real conversations. It would be a group. It's not for public consumption, but for those who want to enter in, that are drawn to the sacred languages, because there's a beautiful refining fire that comes through the languages if we allow them to speak to us as they call out to us. But two, be able to take that fire that's coming in, that is going to reveal things that are very true and very much are the wrestle we're dealing with, just like what you're dealing with right now and what I'm dealing with right now. And it's been my heart to try to be transparent on there, and I see that we've got memes posted and whatnot, and they're really wonderful. But the heart of it is we need to have a safe place where we can express and explore these things with one another, because it's getting freaking difficult. And it's
Yeah.
going to continue getting more difficult, because more light, more revelation, more of our shadow is going to be revealed. And then what do you do with it? You can separate and divide, or you can come together and spiritually love on one another, hugging on one another, using, words that are going to comfort, edify, and exhort, all the Christian
Hmm.
lingo, right? But that have truth to them, and say, man, you know what? I'm wrestling with this too. So what can we do about it right now? Well, I don't know what to do about it right now, but I sure love you. you know it is hard. And I will say, it's hard, Brandon, and I get it, and I feel your heart, because I've had many tears in the last couple weeks that have been in my own private time, because of the wrestling that I'm going through as well. So just take good cheer. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that you decided to come on today. And I'm hoping that the energy that is coming in from the beautiful people that are joining us, plus what our discussion will be today, will be something to help lift you a little. I mean, I would like it to be a lot, but whatever it is, may it be something from my heart to your heart and everyone that's here, that we are in this together. And I see you and I hear you and I love you and you are my family.
Yeah, thank you. And before you get into what you want to share, I would just
Yeah.
like to say this, that let's just honor people when they have very vulnerable moments. Let's honor
Yes.
them, and not try to put them down or necessarily try to quote unquote fix them,
Mm.
but just sit with that in that moment and allow them to feel, because we're taught backwards in culture that this is assumed weakness. This is
Right.
not assumed as a strength, but to me it takes extreme strength for a person to open themselves up and be completely vulnerable to the attacks or whatever that could come, because there are a lot of people that attacks where you just got to stay in dreamland all the time and everything is marshmallows and fairies and everything, but that's not realistic. That's not being, to me, being very realistic, because we all have hurts, we all have wounds. Some people are further along in the journey, but we need to honor each other and
I
just
agree.
be there.
I totally agree. And the difficulty is that if you live in that constant light side and you choose to ignore and ignore and ignore the shadow side, eventually it's going to be so overwhelming that it is going to chase you down and pin you down so it can be dealt with. And I would much rather deal with it when it first surfaces than keep rejecting it. Because I know now, with almost 50 years of experience on this earth, that every time I reject it and don't want to deal with it, it gets magnified and it gets magnified until you have a complete catastrophic breakdown like I did a few years ago. Because I mean, that was some scary, scary time that I went through. Very, very scary time. And I didn't think I was going to make it back through it. I thought they were going to lock away the key, lock me away, throw away the key. There we go. And that was going to be the rest of my life. Thank goodness that it wasn't. I'm thankful that I was able to get enough courage on the inside of me to face those things. And it wasn't
Yeah,
easy, and it never is easy, and it doesn't feel good. But when we're victorious on the other side, when we've conquered one of those shadows, or at least accepted it and transmuted it and love it and realize that it's there and identify the wound it's attached to, oh my gosh, it's so liberating. It's like
yeah,
the backpack that we carry around our whole life that we keep putting stones in, right? You can look at light all you want, you can get
mm,
all the revelation you want, but that damn backpack is still there.
that's right. That's
And
exactly right.
somehow those rocks become heavier, right? So a
Hmm.
20-pound stone, if you don't deal with it, all of a sudden is 30 and then 40 and then 50. And you get a couple of those in your backpack, pretty soon you are not moving anywhere. I don't care how good of spiritual shape you are in and how much revelation you have, you are at a standstill until you deal with those stones.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
There's
I
nothing else
understand
that can
with
do.
you. Yeah, I totally am with you. I had the same thing a few years ago. Like, this isn't one of those moments for me. This is just processing. It's just dealing. And for me,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, coming from a very male, don't show your emotions, I've never, cried a whole lot. So now, like, I need that energy release sometimes, but when I went through mine, it was, I really did not was going to make it. I really did not think I was going to come out of what was happening, and if it wasn't for really amazing people that probably didn't even know they had an impact on my life, if it wasn't for these amazing people that God strategically put around me and in my life, even though I didn't know what was going on, I might not have made it. And if I didn't have my two
Right,
my two children, I might not have pulled out of that.
right,
And to
right.
be really, really honest with people on here, and then I know we want to move forward, but I don't mean you, like, letting the spirit kind of do what the spirit wants. Um, when I went out to Colorado and had all this happening, I stayed in a shed on top of a mountain with no running water. And many a nights I put the barrel of that gun in my mouth, and all I wanted my flesh to end, and that was the only way I knew to get the pain to end. But every time the picture of my two boys would flash into my mind, and I said, I can't do that to them. I cannot do this to them. I have to fight, man. I have got to fight through this. And if there's anybody watching at all that is going through it now, fight. Keep pushing. You will get through it. It
Mhm.
will end. It will. I promise you. It will end, and you will get through it.
I totally agree. I think many of us, if we were being transparent, many of us would say that we've come to that point as well. I mean, I tried. I tried taking my life several times and I got hospitalized because of it when I was younger. So I know what that fight is like. And I know the darkness and the despair, but there's always some sort of glimmer of hope and ray of light that can be a multitude of ways that is reaching out to us. Because on the other side, I mean, you think about how much strength you get from it, right? The
Yeah.
resistance. So, like resistance training, you're pushing against weights, but then the muscles grow and they can continue to be able to handle more weight. And so it's a progression of us becoming strong through our wrestle and our struggle, so that when, like you just said, when you come across somebody that is in their deep despair, you can love them back to life.
That's right. That's
You
right.
can be that resistance training in that moment. If they're trying to push a bar up and it's like on their neck, you can help take a little bit of that weight off of them so that they can actually get reestablished and push it off their own.
That's right.
That's what a weightlifting partner does for you. And they don't do the whole work for you because that would be just their workout. But they do come alongside to assist in those moments of toughness and difficulty so that you can finish your set. And it's the same
Yeah.
thing. I like using analogies that I can connect to because it's like, yeah, the beautiful picture of what we do for one another, or lightening the load. Let me walk behind you with your backpack and just kind of give it a little boost to say, hey, you got to deal with those rocks, but I'll take a little of it off for you right now
Yeah.
until I see that you're not willing to do any work. And then I'm just going to have to let go again.
Yeah. And
There's
to
a time and
me,
a place.
yeah. And to me, that's beautiful because when you've walked through it, when you come upon other individuals that have really walked through it and they've been into their shadow, they know, then you're able to meet that are going through it with mercy and grace and tenderness and compassion and love, and even if we just go off the English narrative of the Bible, Jesus met everyone with that, and I know me and you've talked and things are a little different in the original language, but it says that if we go off the English, that Jesus suffered in every way that we suffered, so he went through it. He went through that. So he was able to show compassion and mercy, whereas the religious people didn't want to show compassion and mercy and everything because they were of their father, the ego, and they didn't even want to deal with. They loved their ego. They loved the darkness. They didn't want to come into the light.
Right.
And so it's really good because it's awesome when I come across other people that are hurting and they might not know that I might be hurting or going through some things at that moment, but I'm able to sympathize with their weakness. I'm able to
Right.
sympathize with them and have compassion and mercy and grace with them and just meet them where they're at. If we're not willing to be all things to all people, then pack your bags, man, and just live your life however you want to. You know what I'm saying? But if you're on a mission and you want the spiritual journey and you want the two inside of you to become one, then we've got to be able to meet people wherever they're at, honor their journey and respect them and meet them where they're at.
Exactly. So, two things here regarding what you just said. Well, the meeting where one is at is vitally important if we're going to be practically walking out unconditional love. And
Right.
it's really good for us because it sharpens us. Because do we truly believe it? Do we truly manifest it? Are we it? Because you'll see where you're not when you meet somebody that isn't thinking the same way you are. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to see, can you still hold your shalom and meet them where they're at instead
Hmm.
of trying to bring them where you're at, because there is no right or wrong in this process. The spiritual journey It's the same spiritual journey. It just looks different for other people because we all wind up at the same place. Some are longer journeys, some are
Right.
shorter. Some spend a lot more time building up their dark than they do in the light. But regardless of what that looks like externally, the journey on the inside is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay.
had a question from my friend Zarin, and I really like this, and we're going to address this. But I have something I need to do before I do it. He actually wanted to ask. He asked about, can you talk about the practical? And then it just zipped off. Here we go. Here, I'll do it this way. Um, can you talk about the practical steps of your testimony of dealing with the rock, so to speak, and what it looks like to go inside? And we are going to deal with that. But before we do with that, I needed to ask for forgiveness from you. Before the internet went out this morning, I started listening to our talk last week, and something that I have a challenge with, and it's my shadow, and it's one of those things that drive me freaking nuts about myself. I'm aware that it's where, so this will kind of go in a great segue of what Zarin asked, is that I have a tendency when I'm listening to somebody speak, getting caught up in what's going on up here about what I want to say next.
Yeah.
And you made an incredible statement, and it pierced me. I mean, literally, it was right before the power went off. It's like you made this statement. I just went on and wanted to bring Hebrew into it, I guess. And then I sat there and I was like, oh my God, that was such an amazing comment. And I never made any room for it. And I am so sorry, because it was an incredible comment. And I didn't honor you because I was at the place where I was trying to formulate what I was going to go in next to try to link everything together. And I am sorry because that wasn't honoring to you. And I don't even know if you felt it or even registered it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I felt it this morning and it pierced my heart. And so I wanted to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive me. I forgive me for being such an ass and not honoring in that what you were sharing, because really nothing that I have to say really matters. I mean, we can learn from it, but we're learning from each other. I don't need to hear myself speak. Okay. I'm in my head all day long. I hear myself speak all day long, and it drives me crazy sometimes. And I didn't honor you, and I am so sorry. So just to let you know what I am going to be doing so I can work on this is I'm going to have a notepad. And if there's something that triggers me when you're talking, I'm going to jot a quick note down and I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to let you speak, because your words have value. Your words matter to me. And I don't ever want to dishonor you by moving on to something that I think I need to share and miss a beautiful moment and a point of a revelation that needs to come forward because it pierced me. And I just walked right over it last week. You had mentioned something about the kingdom and that we are all fractals, and that we fracture ourselves out as we continue to create, and that we need to support one another. Like we need to build up these fractals that are walking around in the kingdom, instead of, I mean, you didn't go into, I didn't allow you to elaborate because I walked all over you. But I understood what you were saying, because now we're here at this point right now. And exactly what you said last week is exactly what I'm seeing this week, that the problem is. If we walk over, if I choose to walk over you, and there was something that I needed to get within me, I had to see it today, because we need to be here to support one another, to build each other up, instead of us trying to puff ourselves up by the knowledge we have or the latest and greatest revelation, when that really doesn't freaking matter. What matters is the heart level of connecting with one another and lifting one another up, not one higher than the other, but honoring right where they are at. Because if you do that, there's going to be some profound statements coming forward, because the heart will be allowed to speak instead of the head, because it will know that it's safe. Trust is the biggest challenge that we have. And I didn't honor you, which didn't make trusting ground. And I'm very, very sorry about that. And I would ask that you would forgive me, because it's something I'm still working on. I interrupt a lot. And I know where it's coming from. So Zarin, This is what happens is you take a look at something that is part of your shadow and you have to face it and you have to look at it and you go, oh my God, I interrupt all the freaking time. And it's okay to be mad at it. It's okay to be sad with it. It's whatever emotion that you need to go through where you're dealing with that shadow of something that you've refused to look at, and then trace it back to see why. And the bottom line for me is that I interrupt because my words when I was a child were never validated. They were never respected. They were never honored. There was nothing. There was more shutdown than there was the encouragement for me to express. And so I get to the point where my ego starts reacting and I feel like I have to hurry up and say something so that I'm being validated that what I have to say matters and that someone hears. And so it ends up like, well, hey, it's more important than what you're sharing right now because I need you to hear me to validate me. And so I know where it's at. So in reality, when you do your shadow work, it's not a lot of fun because you have to look at it. You have to feel the weight of it. You have to say, oh my God, this is part of me. And then you have to choose to love it and figure out where did this come from? And generally all of it is coming from childhood wounds from this like 0 to 6. And then it can transfer in later because this was like a continuation of my young adulthood of never having my words validated or that they were wrong or they were stupid or they didn't matter or, you know, you're just crazy talking or whatever it was, or stop feeling that way or, you know, whatever. And it's haunted me. And because my inner child is like, could you please love me? Could you stop rejecting me? So this is where you go take time by yourself. And if you got to go punch a pillow, if you got to go throw rocks until you can get it all out and then go, okay, do you feel better now? I see you. I totally understand why you're doing this, but that's okay. I validate you. Your words matter to me. And it's self-talk and you have to do it out loud. You need to be able to do it so your subconscious can hear you. Can't be running in your head. So, you know, I recommend doing this stuff by yourself or else people will think that you're literally crazy or it'll give them courage to do it themselves. But you have to take the time to do it. And it is not fun. It is not fun. But the other side of it is when you get one of those big rocks out of your backpack, I can move a little bit faster now.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you saying that and, you know, hear you and honor you in that. And, you know, if I'm going to be like exactly like my father, then, you know, you're forgiven before you even asked for it, you know? And, I think this is so beautiful, man. Like, this is really touching my heart because, you know, me and Daniel had our little thing this week and, you know, so people can see, and there was healing that happened to that. And then this, just like, you know, for me, I feel like in the spirit, you know, it's time for us to the petty shit, excuse my language, but lay the petty shit aside, man, and the theology and the doctrine and I gotta be right and all this stuff. And let's just be brothers and sisters to everybody and let's hear each other out. You know, when the Spirit told me, honor everyone in their journey. It doesn't matter what they believe or where they're at, or if they're all Hebrew and Aramaic, or if they're Greek or Latin or what. It doesn't matter because you know what? I've come to learn that it doesn't matter what language you're reading. If you're led and guided by the Spirit, you can come to the knowledge of the truth.
Yep.
And there'll be people that are going to be called to you and kin. So like, I feel like this is just so beautiful. I wish more people, honestly, not, and this isn't an ego thing or a pride thing, but I wish more people could do this, could just openly have some hard conversations to see people work through it. Because I feel like, you know, it's like Jesus was an image that we needed to behold in our mind. He was an image that we needed of our totality and what we are to become. But if we have an image, we don't know what it looks like.
Right.
You know? So I appreciate you, Carrie. Thank you so much, man, for that. And I didn't even think nothing of it, you know, when you brought it up. I'm like, what is she talking about?
I know. Well, it was pretty glaring at me this morning, and I love you. I do. You are an amazing friend to me, and the things that we've shared and we've talked about, hence why we're doing this. So, I'm glad that we're able to talk about these things and be really real and transparent so that others can see that it's okay. You know,
That's
it's
right.
sometimes it makes it difficult when the emotions get too far out of check. When people are in that anger zone, sometimes you just kind of have to walk away, but you need to come back and visit it because
Yeah.
again, that will just keep resurfacing, right? Those triggers are just going to keep resurfacing over and over and over again, and it's intentional. It's just meant. It's like a hamster wheel. Um,
It's a great witness as to what can happen when
yeah,
we lay our egos aside, because
yeah,
the only thing that can be offended is your ego. That's it.
right,
The
right,
spirit cannot. So when we can lay
right,
our egos aside, that's what's going to really help heal humanity. We can implement systems and change governmental systems and financial systems or whatever all we want to, but it's us recognizing our ego, our shadow, overcoming it, putting the ego aside and just be love. Just
I
be
know.
love to each other.
I agree. I'm glad that you actually brought that up because, spirit and soul is not divided. The ego is what's divided into light and dark.
Hmm.
And really that can translate to the conscious and the subconscious. What is hidden is the subconscious, what is revealed is the conscious level side. And that's really where we got divided. The soul isn't divided, the spirit isn't divided, but the ego sure can be. And then when you have too much trauma, like I did, you can fracture out into multiple egos that have light and dark.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's quite fun to try to integrate all of those back, let me tell you, because all those wounds, you have to deal with them or else it's just going to keep manifesting. And you talk about messy. I
Yeah.
laugh about it now just because I think it's funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but I think it's funny now on the other side going, wow, geez, okay, who's showing up right now? And now I can say it's just me. There's just one of me that shows up right now in the transparency of the moment. So I did want to bring, if it's not really shifting gears, it's on the same thing based on what you were talking about, kind of some things that were coming in with to me this morning is I really have been marinating this week about revelation. That Vitruvius man, that thing that I shared that last week didn't work. Was it last week that didn't work? No, the week before that wasn't working, that I thought the PowerPoint presentation was.
Yeah.
Um, when I redid the video of that, I've really been marinating on it and the importance of us truly comprehending what revelation is meant for, like truly comprehending what it's meant for.
Hmm.
Because, and you started it out, you get high on a spiritual path and you get all these revelations, right? But then eventually all of that light, all of the shadow stuff that is connected to all of that light is going to slam you like a tsunami. And that is why these last couple of weeks have been so hard, because you have been on an absolute roll on the revelation that you have been giving. This hopefully that phone come back on again. And give Brandon a second. So as I don't know, his phone might have died, but I'm going to continue sharing anyway because he and I can talk later about this. So if you think about it this way, revelation is
Okay.
meant to, they're okay. Didn't know if your battery went down or what, or if you got a
No,
phone call. Okay. Got it. So you've been having a ton of revelation come in. I mean, like weeks on end of revelation coming in. And it was only a matter of time before the tsunami of shadow stuff was going to overtake you. Because as far as I see it, and I love this. I love it because you can actually see it in the tetragrammaton itself. If we take a look at it instead of the external narrative of who Yod-Heh-Vav is and the storyline and the history, because when we get into the esoteric, deeper hidden stuff, it's all about you right now. It's about what is it speaking to you, where you are in your moment, for what you are needing to deal with. It has nothing to do with the external outside world. It doesn't have anything to do with storylines or narratives. It is exactly what you need to see in the moment for your next step. So when we look at the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, this power comes in to reveal something so that you can connect to something, so another revelation will come. Well, what is that? Well, the power that you get comes from a revelation. So it's like a circle. It goes round and round and round. It's like Yod He Vav He, Yod He Vav He, Yod He Vav He, Yod He Vav He. This revelation that you get, there's power. This power comes in and bam! So power is the Yod. Bam! Is the revelation that is meant to connect to your heart to then reveal a shadow. So I'm going to say that one more time. Yod is a letter that means and is connected to vision, and it means the work and deed of your hand. It's an outstretched hand that is waiting for power. That's what it's doing. It's like, give me power. I want power. So power comes like a lightning bolt into your hand. Boom! You get a revelation of something that is so profound, and you connect to it in your heart letter level. And then what is released? Revelation of your shadow. Because the pattern is mother and father, Yod He Vav He. So this revelation comes in from higher light to connect to the heart to get to your shadow. And that is, so this is removing the outside narrative of Yod He Vav He being God and letting the letters speak to us outside of the narrative on the inside to see what's going on. So if you get too much light coming in and you're like, bam, revelation, bam, revelation, bam, revelation, and your heart is just flowing wide open, well, all of that has to go somewhere. It's meant to go to the shadow to heal wounds. Because what happens if you don't deal with some of those wounds, you're not going to get any more powerful revelations, Yod He, power revelation. That's what Yod He is, power revelation. You won't get any more powerful revelations because the body cannot contain it without dealing with the corresponding shadow. So in reality, you know what happens? You get tested. And the reason why you get tested, another word for that is triggered, right? Getting triggered. The only reason why that comes is so that you can be tested with the information that you got to see if you're working on your shadow or you're not. And that's where you and I were sharing it. You were like, right after I shared it, boom, I got, and you were talking about how you felt like you failed your test. And I was like, no, you didn't fail your test. It was an opportunity for growth. I don't see anything as a failure. Not at all. So be careful when you're seeking revelation for the sake of revelation, because yes, it can be a spiritual high. It can absolutely be a spiritual high. That's why you talking at the very beginning of this conversation, I'm like, well, obviously Spirit was sharing stuff with me and you were thinking about stuff and it's all connected. Imagine that same Spirit. So you get a new revelation, you're calling the test to yourself. It's not something that just happens. You are attracting it to you because it's meant to reveal your shadow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that's good to see that, which is there. And that's, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this is why it goes round and round again, because then if you do it right, the power revelation comes, you connect, and it reveals your shadow, then you know you get another revelation. And this is the beauty of it, right? Because there's a spiritual high that comes from revelation. And you hit it dead on the top of that nail with a hammer. Whack! Smack that right in. Yes, it is a high. It feels good. You can hide in the spirituality. You can just keep chasing after revelation after revelation. But you can't deal with any more until you deal with the shadows and the tsunami comes. But as soon as you deal with the tsunami and you allow all that to go through and you start digging in that backpack and looking at the rocks, what is this connected to? And you start getting the weight that is associated. Okay, so the weight of the shadow that is corresponding to the weight of the light that came in need to be transmuted. So as soon as you take the shadow that is the corresponding of the weight of the revelation, then you get new revelation. So if you don't want any more revelation because you don't want to do any more shadow work, then stop pressing in for new revelation. You just should walk away. Be happy with what you got. I mean, it's just real talk. We all chase for that revelation high. How many of us went through the Christian church narrative, going to conference after conference after conference, chasing for the latest, greatest revelation so we could get a spiritual high? But then what did we do with the revelation? We sought for more.
Yeah. What I see that is too is this is why you have many different kind of revelations. And when we get a revelation, and that we shouldn't share that revelation. That's not what I'm saying, what I'm about to say. But that revelation really is personalized, and it's full specifically shadow, so that you can go in. And instantly the ego says, you got to go out and share your body and find other egos onto it.
Right. Well, and that's why some people will sit and marinate on something.
I don't want to trip anybody up. We got a little delay, but it's
actually, it's good because it's allowing me to make sure that I'm pausing enough so that I'm listening to what you have to say instead of me opening my mouth. So the test came. That which I asked for forgiveness for, because we have the delay, is testing me to see if I really was pierced in my heart or not. This is just totally proving out what I just shared. I brought the test to myself through the delay of the cell phone connection and the internet. I love it. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh, that's good. That's good.
So great. Is I'm not trying to say that nobody should go out and share revelation. That's how we got the scripture. Someone got revelation, they wrote it down, record an account of it. So I don't want to focus, not go out and talk at all. Nothing is for you. It needs to come within us first. When we read scripture, we first start out life. Stories. They're talking to myself, pointing the finger. When I get a and we should see, what is this saying about me, everybody, or is this just specifically for me because I'm so loved by the Father that He's showing me my shadow? Right.
Well, and here, okay, so I'm gonna add something to this. I see that it going internally, like you just said, is the best way, because let yourself be tested, pass the test, and then you have the authority to speak forth the revelation.
I agree.
If we jump on it too soon, sometimes our words are going to sound very hollow. But when we allow the revelation to make the change, then we speak from the place of having authority. This is when the shepherd's staff is then given to you, the Lamed, to teach and instruct on what you just learned because you became it. You were instructed in it. It taught you, and now you get to turn around and teach it because authority was granted. That's why, honestly, Ken and I waited for 5 years before we even started talking publicly about the sacred languages. And I'm not saying that I have all the authority. Please don't take it that way, because it's been more humbling than anything else in this entire journey, because more light, more shadow, more light, more shadow. And it's meant to humble us. I wanted to make sure that there was authority, and this is why I had to be healed. I couldn't come out here speaking these things if I still had CPTSD. I couldn't come out here talking to you guys if I had multiple personalities. Are you kidding me? There would be no authority in it, because what happens is change does not happen without application, right? So if the
Right.
revelation is coming in, it's meant for you to produce change in your life. That way you have the ability to speak having something with substance, because then it's coming from your throat chakra, which does a lot more than just speaking of truth. But the throat chakra, when that sucker is open, is because this heart revelation happened that then illuminates it, so that the mouth, the words that you speak, have substance to it. Why else would we share? I don't need to sit and talk about sports and the weather and the Olympics. I don't care about talking about those things. It might be your thing, but why? Why? I don't need to hear myself speak. And I certainly don't need you to sit and listen to me speak, because my dad said I had diarrhea mouth when I was a child, and I have learned to go, you know what? Well, I did. I was nonstop. You couldn't shut me up. So now, when I want to speak, I want it to be things of substance. Because you can go anywhere and get conversation that isn't of substance. Watch primetime television.
That's right. That's right. That's
because
beautiful.
Real conversations dig deep. And our shadow and our wounds are terrified of that, because they do not want to be seen. It exposes them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to shut down a conversation with somebody, start going deep.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I've seen that so many times, man. People will be very willing to talk about the Kardashians or political or financial or whatever, but you start talking about, deep things inside of them, telling them who they really are or any of this stuff, man, and I've seen people just cringe and like wiggle right out that seat and take off running.
It takes a brave individual, a courageous person, to go within to see who they truly are.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, man.
Me too.
I'm telling you. I've gone, my military training,
Yeah.
the stuff I went through as a child and everything, that wasn't nothing, dude. I'd go to boot camp and I thought this was hard until I challenged the Creator and I told the Father, I need to know the truth and you need to tell me or I'm walking away from you. And then came the hardest training I have ever had in my life.
And the response was, good. I've been waiting for this. I was just waiting for you to do that. Now we can get some stuff done. Now we can have a journey. You haven't seen nothing yet, son.
Oh no, I thought I had seen a lot.
I'm laughing with you. I'm laughing with you because I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the hardest training is the dark night of the soul, by far.
It is, and I did the video and we talked about this because they really need to change the name of that, man. It is. I wish it was just one night. I wish.
No,
it's not. It's however the hell long it takes for you.
Well, here's the deal. Every time you get a new revelation, you enter into another dark night of the soul. Every time. It doesn't stop.
Well, we are infinite beings created in the image of our Creator. So, I mean, the light is limitless. The darkness, therefore, is also limitless. So, I mean, it's always going to be an exposing and everything, moving up on the journey until we are integrated completely back in one with Source,
Yeah. And I think the beauty of that, if we get to, I believe that there's going to be a point where there is no longer dark. Everything then becomes. So in other words, what I mean by that is once our wounds are healed, once they're healed, then there's no triggering. Then everything just becomes information. Light is just light. because you're not getting triggered, because you integrated all of the shadow, all of your wounds, all of your hurts into the place of bringing them home to the heart. And it's here.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, when the light's coming in, there's no need to have it fracture out into the dark to go heal that wounded child or the things that are on your shadow side, because you've already dealt with them all. So the dark night of soul is going to continue happening until those wounds are healed, until we take our beast ego nature, we look at it, we heal it, we transmute it into love, and then we get to the place where we're not triggered by anything. So if any of us are being triggered by anything, you still got some shadow work to do. I'm pointing fingers right back here, because there are things that move me out of my shalom. You know, peace that goes beyond all understanding is when we get into that place where understanding becomes overstanding.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah, I think Daniel
and that
Thorn.
Go ahead.
I think Daniel Thorness gave a really good example of this last night. I was listening to him and his little interaction and thing that he had going on at his house last night. But, you know, if we, even the English narrative of the Bible, you know, we're all destined to be kings, right? In Revelation, it says, I have a throne for you to sit on. It's my throne, and my given to me by the Father. So in that, once we become king, it's not that the darkness goes away, because in Psalms, right, we read, I, the Lord God, made the darkness and the light, and even the dark is as of light to me. It's not that it's not there, but it's there. And then when we're on the throne, those things come up and we can say, no, that's not really me. I'm not going to give that my attention. No, I'm not going to give that attention. I'm not going to give that attention, because that's what a king does. A king, you know, a king doesn't do anything. He just sits there and rules over his kingdom, you know? So, I thought that was pretty beautiful in that. And it's along the same lines as what we're saying, you know, it's not that it goes away, but you are fully known, right? Just as the Gospel of Thomas says, right? When you fully know yourself, then you will be fully known.
And the reason why the light and the dark don't bother you at that point is because you no longer have any triggers.
Mm-hmm.
You're not bothered by it. I think it actually supersedes that place of going, nope, that's not me. Nope, I'm going to not look at that. That has nothing to do with me anymore. It literally, you don't even have to even go through that kind of thought process, because you then are in that place of conscious awareness of seeing all that is going on around you as information, because you don't attach anything to it. There's no storyline. There's no pain. There's no suffering. There's no evil bad guys. There's nothing. It's just information. And see that,
wow.
And I'm gonna go a little. I didn't listen to the conversation. I have no idea what was being shared other than what you just shared. But when I take a look at the word king, and I look at the word queen, and I take a look at the word angel, messenger, there's these movements on it. So Melech, Memlamed, fallen cough, is the fallen cough is a place where we are emptying our cup, because the cough is a representation of a vessel. So when it's in its fallen position, we are in the place where we're emptying our vessel out, which is kind of funny, because Mem Lamed also means to fill up. So as you're filling up, you're emptying out at the same time. Because the waters of chaos come in to instruct you so you can empty out what you need to, because you're being filled with light in order to empty out which is no longer serving you. So this is really when we become a sovereign over ourselves, where we're not allowing the emotions and everything, the chaotic waters, to consume us. We rule over ourselves. This is where we put the beast ego under our feet instead of it coming and ruling us, so that we can deal with the chaotic waters that rise up to empty out everything that is attaching itself to keep the wounded child in the beast ego condition. So, you know, Melech, king, sounds wonderful. But here's the deal. Melchizedek is a Melech that has a Yod. So a king that is empty his cup now has power, but that's the beginning of the series of Yod He Vav He. So when you become a Melchizedek, just be mindful that what is coming in is power to reveal that which needs to be connected to, that's going to reveal your shadow, so you can keep going back around, because you've chosen to empty your cup. But it also means now you've grasped the power. You've emptied and you've grasped the power to become righteous. What is righteous? Finding and hunting and chasing after that which is going to show you the door, so you can compress light within you during the circle of time to find the narrow path between the light and the dark, 0 point. That's what Melchizedek means. So we don't want to just stop at king, but we have to understand that Melchizedek is a journey that needs to be walked out. And then when we get to queen, now we have Malakah. Now we have an aleph added on the suffix side. So what have they done? The king to the queen is, I've emptied out all of my cup. Now I've grasped a hold of the power of oneness. Now I have become, and I've grasped the power. So oneness means that you have power in your life now, because you realize that we are with one another. That's why you and I can come together. We can be very transparent. We can have tears. We can ask for forgiveness. We can talk about our struggles, because we recognize that we're one with one another. Like I said in the beginning, your wrestle is my wrestle. My wrestle is your wrestle. We're in this together. That's grasping the power of oneness. So no one is isolated, because even if you feel isolated, that's ego. It's telling you are. It's saying that you're isolated and you're alone and I feel lonely. Well, that's because you're choosing through the ego to remove yourself instead of grasping a hold of the power of oneness and connecting. That's why you feel lonely.
Wow.
The ego is making you feel that way. You got to grasp the power of oneness, and then you won't feel lonely anymore. And the ego does a good job of that. But again, that is coming kind of from the beast ego, from our wounds, because we don't trust. And trust is something that we have to build, that we wrestle on the inside, because we were separated and we're trying to find life so that I can trust you. That's why you and I can be transparent with one another, because we've spent time in. We've been open and transparent. So when we get to angel, messenger, then what happens? We take grasping a hold of the power of oneness externally, and we bring it internally. Where we then recognize it at the soul and spirit level, not the external level, not through the shadow side, recognizing that your wrestle with your shadow is very similar to mine. We all have a shadow and we're all one in it. And that's why we're carrying one another's burdens. It's when it then gets brought on the inside and you are one with the soul and then with spirit and with source creator, that it isn't about the external anymore. And now you become an angel, a messenger, who is also a prophet, who is also a priest, and who is also a teacher. That's what the word malach means.
Wow.
So you go from Melech,
Beautiful.
Melchizedek, Malakah, to Malach.
Wow. That's beautiful.
It's an amazing journey. That's why I love the languages, because you can see the journey right through the letters and see right where you're at. And then you know where your next steps are. You don't have to guess. You know, is it laborious to learn it? Hell yeah. I spent 5 years doing it before I opened my mouth. But it's absolutely a complete joy now. And I apologize if I offended anybody by saying hell yeah, but you know, it's just English words. They have no power over me. So it was hard. It was rough. It was tough. And I found healing from it and through it. And I don't need the Bible anymore. I don't need the sacred languages anymore. I can write down the letters for you. And this isn't pride. This isn't arrogance. This is what, when you go through the process and you become the process and you go through the Aleph and the Tav and you have become the language, you no longer need the book. I can write down the letters for you and I can tell you the spirit journey through the letters without even reading one piece of scripture to you at all.
Yeah.
And then, based upon what I hear from what's coming from your mouth of where you're at, I can tell you right what letter you're on. And I can tell you from the letter you're on what you will be experiencing next. That's the power of it.
Well, that's you know, biblical even in the Bible, right? The Bible that one day that we will have no need to look at our neighbor and say, know the Lord. So in that
Because everyone,
day, you won't need to, yeah, you won't need to preach at them with a book. You won't, we won't, you won't preach. You won't have no need. Everyone will know.
that's where we're getting to right
So
now.
yeah,
If
it's beautiful. It's
if we deal with our shadow.
because really our
So
only fight we've talked about. That's your only wrestle is your shadow. It's never with your neighbor. It's never with another person ever. I don't care what they do to you. It's never with the other person. It's always with your shadow.
and your shadow, until you brace it and work on it, is Satan.
That's right.
We've talked about that before. But
Oh yes.
Satan, Satan, now you're going to love this. This is beautiful. So Satan in Hebrew, as most people know that are here that are joining us, unless you're brand new, Satan in Hebrew means adversary. Now, our shadow is an adversary to us until we transmute it. And here's the beauty. I've shared this before a long time ago, and it's good to bring it up again as a reminder. In the New Testament, the spelling changes. And I'll tell you what, the first time I saw this in the New Testament, I freaked out, and I had to walk away for a little bit because I didn't even know what to do with this, because I still was seeing Satan as this external element through the conditioning that I received when I was in the Christian church.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to project something outward than to realize that the adversary is much closer than you think. And when you have to come to terms with it, that adversarial component lives in you and it is you. It's your shadow. It's following you around 24/7. And so when we externalize and we project everything outwardly, we are never going to deal with what we need to deal with because it's meant to get our attention so that we can be set free of it.
Yeah.
So when I looked it into the New Testament, I didn't know what to do with it because what happened is, first of all, the sheen. So it's spelled sheen tet nun, Satan. So sheen tet nun. So the fire that will cause the wrestle for your fallen flesh. Now, when it gets into the New Testament, the sheen is there. I know, right? The fire that causes you to wrestle your fallen flesh. That is Satan. Now, when it gets into the New Testament, it changes to a samek instead of the sheen. Now, the samek, oh my gosh, the samek means that which surrounds you, protects you, props you up, and supports you. And it is the symbol that is a picture of the wedding ring and the signet ring. That's the first change.
This is where you.
So that was messing
This
with
is where
me
you
big
get
time.
your. Yeah, this is where you get your adversarial friend thing.
Yes, yes, exactly. Which is a different word, but yes, it's very much connected to this word that we've come to know as Satan, right? So then it has an added aleph on the suffix side, and it has a risen noon. So I didn't know what to do with this. I literally did not know what to do with this because at the point when I was looking into this, everything was still external. I hadn't brought it on the inside yet to see the adversarial component on me. So I was warring with everything on the outside. And if you want to look at it, the warring that goes between Republican and Democrat, or religious differences, or race differences, or, the different movements that we've seen. I'm not even going to mention them. But it's all that division externally as having the bad man and the boogeyman out there, which is this consuming fire that you're having to wrestle with, not realizing because it's on the inside. But then when you allow it to take its course, it's that comes in and protects you. It raises your nature up and you become one with it.
Wow.
So
So
then
this
it's
is
no
the
longer,
transformation.
yeah,
Sorry. This is the
no,
transformation of your ego starting out being something that can be very detrimental to you, but when it is submitted, let's say, to the Christ, or fully illuminated, and there is, the light's been fully brought in it, now it goes from something that was that could harm you to something that will protect you.
exactly.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah, because in actuality, the true power comes when we unite all of our fractured pieces into one. The true power comes when we
Wow.
no longer see our shadow because it has been transformed into light.
That's beautiful. Wow.
And because it's the wedding ring, you have wed your higher self and your lower self together into one. The two shall become one flesh. I'm going to say that one more time. Don't think of it externally, think of it internally. The two shall become one flesh.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. No
So,
longer a house divided.
no. And so, therefore, that is why you are then given the signet ring, because you have the power of the master of the house. You have that ability to make decisions because you are no longer divided. You have the authority of oneness. And then what happens is you become the adversarial component to the rest of the world that lives in duality as houses that are divided.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
That's true.
Again, because you're not moved. You're not moved. You're not triggered. The only thing that gets unsettled when you get triggered is your shadow. That's it. That's it.
Hmm.
Now I saw something and I posted a meme. I made it a little bit better because the highlighting contrast wasn't good. But I saw a word yesterday when I was getting ready for sharing today, later in my sharing time this afternoon, as we go letter by letter, word by word. The word asa. And I don't know if you saw the meme or if other people did, but asa is a word that means in Aramaic, it means heal, Heal, and cure. To heal and
Hmm.
cure. It's Aleph, Samek, Aleph. So, based on what I was just sharing with you about the Samek, surrounding, hedging you in, propping you up, supporting you, it's as if with a shield of thorns, the wedding ring and the signet ring is the marrying of the mother and the father in oneness unity that comes together. Asa. That is the cure. And that is what is the healing. I titled it, I actually was sharing it, and I said, this is good medicine.
Wow. Yeah.
To become one with
Yeah.
mother and
That is
father
good.
on the inside.
Yeah. That really is right there. That's so awesome. I saw that, and that's where I love what you're sharing, because I've read it in other texts, but to see it in the original language talk about the mother and the father as two different teachings, but of the same one entity, right? But just the two aspects of this one entity, was very refreshing for me. And it totally makes sense, how Jesus would say, "No one gets to the Father but through me," seeing as how he was. This is pretty awesome. I want to share this. You can tell me, you know, what your thoughts are on it real quick. But being as how the feminine side was cut off from us, really, as humanity,
Mhm.
Jesus representing the feminine, and why he only had 12 disciples. Well, you have 24 cranial nerves, 12 on one side, 12 on the other. It was only 12 cranial nerves from the male side that were the ones that needed discipling. The 12 on the feminine did not. It was nothing wrong with her. That's why Jesus came from the feminine into the masculine to gather 12 disciples, 12 cranial nerves, to say, "Hey guys, now let me show you the way of one."
And then you get your 24 elders that are around the throne.
Right. That's exactly right.
So
Yep.
again,
All of them
if
in.
we Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And they're constantly casting their crowns down. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, anyway, there's a lot that we could share on that. But yeah, that's actually right. And the beautiful thing about where we're at right now, and the reason why these revelations are so strong that are coming in, is because we have the supportive power of the divine feminine to assist us now to deal with the shadow side. Because like I said, she being kept in the dark is familiar with the dark. And because there is the divine feminine and the masculine are all of light, even though they have energies, one that is positive polarity and one is negative polarity. That does not mean that the negative polarity as the feminine energy is dark, bad, or evil. It just means that it functions in that polarity and knows it very well, because that's where the nurturing needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
in that
Yeah.
negative
Wow.
polarity. And so, yeah, without having it, he had to walk it out divinely inspired as the fullness of the divine masculine in order to bring the feminine forward, because even that had been tainted.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been living in toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, both of them, all based on wounds.
Yeah. And that's what Jesus was really saying, when he said, unless you come through me. And I know people might get triggered by this. And then again, I want to reiterate this. This does not, I'm not diminishing Jesus in any kind of way. I'm not diminishing him. But when he said, come through me, he was talking about the teachings he was bringing forth, because he came as a representative of Mother, who we had not gone through, at least as
Right.
a majority and a whole on mass level. Whoever, you have to come through Mother first, then you can get to Father. And unless you come through Mother, you ain't gonna get to Father.
Exactly. Because the way the system of duality works, mother has to teach the divine masculine because it has to be balanced. Father has to teach the divine
Mm-hmm.
feminine. And I know some people are confused on what I've shared with that before. Um, so the way this is okay. So think about a perfect ideal family unit, having a mother and father raising their children that already have this information. So mother would be teaching her children in the divine masculine, which is very linear. And so when we look at the alphabet or the Hebrew language, it'd be teaching them the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. You wouldn't be skipping over and going and telling them, well, everything's connected to everything. And so if they don't learn in linear fashion, and we teach them how to stack blocks and how to build things very linearly, but that is only for a foundational representation. So in building a house, what makes a house have life to it? Furnitures, wall hanging, decorations, things like that. Otherwise, you just have an empty, hollow structure. You have no life in it. So, mother has to teach the structural part of it so that father's teaching can do the divine feminine, the energy that fills the house and brings it full of life. And so, that
Mm-hmm.
is so in a world where this would already be taught, mother would be teaching these principles as the divine masculine in proper order. Also, how to externally orient yourself with people and with not knowing having a great, deep respect, not fear, a deep honoring and respect for God externally, right? To build the structure so that
Mm-hmm.
father could come in and teach the divine feminine of how to fill it with wonder and beauty and what life looks like through the divine feminine, and also giving you the ability to go back down into the basement area where you got all your stuff hidden that you don't want people to see, or the garage that you got everything packed with your crap in there and you can't even use the garage. And father's going to say through the divine feminine, we need to start unpacking these boxes, because
Mm-hmm.
now it's inside work. Yeah, you can make it look all pretty with all these revelations, but that's meant for you to declutter as well. So you're
That's right.
cramming your house with lots of light, lots of beautiful, but at some point you can hoard it, and then you're going to have to go through and get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
So
And
just
this
an
is a perfect
analogy.
example. Yeah, such a great analogy. And me and you have talked privately about this as well, but this is kind of a way of how the one creator keeps balance too, right? The masculine. teaches the feminine, and the feminine teaches the masculine, but it's a way so nothing gets out of balance. It's to
Exactly.
have perfect balance.
Exactly. Because perfect balance is finding the center line between the light and the dark. Because in the place of center, in neutrality, this is where all the power is. This is potential. This is like full power that hasn't been activated yet.
Right.
Because as soon as you swing either way, into the light or into the dark, you've just made this potential energy into kinetic energy, and there's going to be a domino effect. True power is when you can find the balance within and not be moved one way or another with no distortions. You are completely balanced
Mm-hmm.
and centered. That way, you're not giving away
Right.
your power, because either side, you're giving away your power. Yes, you can be in the light and you can give of your time and your energy to help somebody, but you're still giving your power away.
Mm-hmm.
Same
And
thing
this
with
is the
your,
trouble with. Go ahead. Go ahead. I want you to
I
finish.
was going to
I
say,
thought you were
so
done. I'm
if
sorry.
somebody's in the dark and they are operating in their shower and their shadow, and they're controlling and manipulating people, they are taking the power from those who are giving their power away, that are trying to come and assist. So the true
Mm-hmm.
power is when we're not doing any of that and we are in center balance, and we're keeping that right here in the place of perfect shalom, not putting anything out there that would cause the need for the light or dark to increase or to decrease, because it's perfectly balanced. So if we all found center balance within us, we would have such a peaceful world. But right now we don't, because we
Yeah.
get people operating in their wounds. Well, that means more light. And then if there's too much light, then there's got to be too much darkness. So deal with your junk on the inside. Go into the basement, unpack the boxes, go clean out the garage, get rid of stuff that you're not dealing with, clothes that you haven't worn, things that are stuffed in drawers, your little junk drawer. We all have them. Clean the house out so there is no clutter, so that you can have perfect shalom within your temple. Then there is no need for anything that is going to distort either way on light or dark. You are not moved. That is perfect shalom.
Right.
That is,
Yep. That's exactly right. And for what I was going to add to that, for me, and what I see is, having that perfect balance and everything is that's the trouble when we're not taught to go into the darkness, not to go into our shadow. When we always stay on the light, to me, this is like the virgin parable, or with the oil, the virgins with the oil. You had half that did not have any oil. They didn't do any work. They just stayed to one side, and then you had the other half that they went in. They took the light and they went in, and they found that perfect balance between. Therefore, they had oil. So when the Christ came, they were ready. They were ready for it. And I know that can be multi-layered in meaning or whatever, but that's what I'm saying is if we stay and go to just the light, just the light, just the light all the time, but the light is given to us, as you said, as the revelation, so that we can go into our darkness, into our shadow, and illuminate that which has been hidden to us.
right. And when you look into the Aramaic, just to let you know, just to add on to what you just said, when we talk about the wise virgins, because I did like a 12-week study on that, or however 15-week study on it. You guys can go see on our YouTube channel. It's under the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, and I break down every verse. The first verse is incredibly telling. Oh my gosh, it was like a shock factor. But when we get to the place where the wise and foolish, when it says that they took vessels of oil with their lamps, that, when you look at it, they translated it as vessels of oil with their lamps. But when you look at
Mm-hmm.
it, it had to do with having garments of light.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
shadow work. Those who are have wisdom are those who have integrated their shadow and have done their shadow work, so they will be clothed in garments of light, because they will no longer have a shadow, because they welcome their shadow home.
Mm.
Because this is the place where the Merkaba activates, right here. You have to have this toroidal field working, because we have our energy body, right? We have our energy body, but our heart makes its own toroidal field. So our energy body creates a toroidal field, but then we have the heart that creates a toroidal field.
Mm-hmm.
And because they move differently in different rotations, this is what gives the activation of the Merkaba, the light body, with the male energy and the female energy and the higher and the lower self all coming into oneness unity. Has to be brought back into the heart.
Wow.
So that's a huge thing. So when I actually saw it in Aramaic, I was like, oh my gosh, it's garments of light. It's like, well, yeah, I can see why they didn't want to translate it that way.
Yeah. We want you to know.
No. No, because this is all about us taking our power back. Again, this is bringing it into the oneness unity, into center point, into 0 point, where all potential is open to us. But that doesn't mean that we need to act upon anything.
Hmm.
That is when
Yeah.
you get into the place of Christ consciousness, where you are in loving awareness and nothing moves you out of your shalom. So you can be walking around your day and you can see things, but you've been able to render everything in that place of neutrality to see the purpose of the light and the dark. And I know this is difficult. I know this is difficult for people because I had a question. Two things I want to interject here. I had a question that was private message to me about answering people when they say, and you start talking about God, and then they say, well, what about all these terrible things that are going on in the world? What about the things that are happening to the little children? What about this? What about that? And I don't even know how to answer them. And I said, honestly, there isn't a place where you can answer it, because this has to be something that is experientially known and revealed to you.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
if you need to have explanation, or you're trying to project it on a creator, like, I don't want to believe in God because he allows all this stuff. Well, if he didn't allow this stuff, we would have no free will.
That's right.
So you like to have your freedom to make all your choices, but because there is free will, all of this stuff is happening simultaneously. So then what do you want your God to be? A dictator? Do you want your God to be a slave master? Or do you want that which you worship to be that which gives you free will, because that creator loves you unconditionally, so that you can experience the life the way you want to experience it, because it is your experience?
That's right. And we wouldn't, if I can add to that, I talk about contrast a lot, and I know you've talked about contrast a lot. But for right now, in this stage, in this school of in our period of growth that we're in,
Yeah.
it's needed. Like I tell people all the time, you don't know how it happened, but how do you know what love is unless you know what love is not? And how do you even know what light is if you don't know what darkness is? And how do you, I mean, the list can go on and on. The examples can go on and on. So just as in the scripture we read where God said that I raised Pharaoh up for this purpose, and we look at Pharaoh and think Pharaoh is just so bad, he was doing all. And I'm not saying what he was doing was great. I'm not condoning his behavior, but God, the creator, said, I raised him up so that demonstrated, so that you could see. You needed the contrast to understand what I was trying to have you learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I would say that. The difficulty lies when and I always say this to you, and it's not a correction. When we get to this
I know.
place, it's needing to divorce us from the narratives. Because when we go into history, right? When we go into history and we want to talk about entities like Pharaoh, again, this isn't correction here, Brandon, at all. This is me talking to me here, because I do this all the time as well. Excuse me. The esoteric teachings in the sacred languages divorces us from all narratives. And I see your question, James Spencer. I will answer you in just a moment here, even though I am kind of answering it right now when I'm talking to Brandon here. When we choose to take it back to a narrative, we are missing the whole intention of the purpose of what is being said in the esoteric side, because it's all the external. So we'll look and see what Pharaoh is doing. Hey, I raised Pharaoh up for this, so this can be demonstrated. But we have to bring it back here. What is it saying to you about you? Because you're Pharaoh,
Mm-hmm.
you're Moses,
So,
you're Elijah, you're Yeshua. You're Peter, James,
That's
Paul.
right.
You're Timothy. You're Bartholomew. You're all of those. So, and I know that's difficult. That is very difficult for us to wrap our mind around unless you've spent more time in the sacred languages and see that it's all meant to be in here. What's going on in the inside? So when you read something like that and you begin digging into it, Pharaoh was, the word itself is adversarial friend that produces fruit. So in Pharaoh, and it's one who sees and is given revelation of the shadow. So Pharaoh being raised up, what does that say to you? Well, the fruit is being raised up in you so that you can see as one who is a leader that has the eye, in order to see the light and the dark. So Pharaoh was raised up for this, for you to be able to see inside. And so, James, when you're asking the question about, is this why Yeshua came through Mary? I don't like to speak to any narratives anymore because the narratives are part of Mother's teaching. And yes, we do need it because if you're still in the external orientation of your education, you need the stories. How do we teach? And I'm not, please, I guess if this triggers you, then this triggers you. This is not my heart. I'm just providing information. But if we still stick to the storylines, then that is like us when we are teaching children by bringing in nursery rhymes and sharing stories to be able to get points across that we need to learn from. What was the something Asaph's? There was the stories. I don't even remember. There was something fables. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's like stories that we are taught to learn principles for our external orientation of how we treat one another. What does it look like? And it's based on duality, the good and the evil. What is righteous? What isn't? Who's the good guy in this? Who's the bad guy? So-and-so did this. The fact remains that so much of history has been tainted and changed that if we go off these narratives as a historical record as to what they may or may not be the truth. And if we hang on to those things, then we're missing the inside work because we're all making it external. So to ask the question about, is that why Yeshua came through Mary? I cannot answer that because I'm looking at what the narrative is saying to me on the inside. So if I'm saying it, what is it saying on the inside? So if you look at the name Yeshua, it has to do with rock. It has to do with a rock. It has to do with crying out. It has to do with coming and aiding in the time of need. And it also has to do with being a ray of light. So Yeshua coming through Mary. So what does Mary's name mean? So if the ray of light is to come through me because I am crying out for help, because there's also a word that means being a being of substance, I'm crying out. I need help, but light is coming in to be the foundation and the rock that I can stand on, that I can be a being of substance that has been given power because I've been willing to go through the flame, connect at my heart level so that I can see. If that was being birthed through Miriam, through the divine feminine, then I'm now taking it on an inside story as to what is happening on the inside so I can manifest it externally, divorcing ourselves from the narratives, divorcing ourselves from all the arguments of this is what happened in speculation. Is this why he was thinking? Is this what he was doing? What were the disciples thinking? What was Pharaoh doing? What was John doing when he was on Patmos, right? We can get into speculation all day long about history. And for me, I see that a lot of that can be wasted energy when we can turn and take that same energy and bring it right back here. What are the words saying? If we need to hold on to narratives, then that means that we're still in Mother's teaching, and that is good. I'm not saying it's bad because that instructs us a whole lot because that's how we learn duality. And we need these stories. This is how we remember things. So I'm not calling anybody immature. I'm not trying to put anybody down. If this triggers and it hurts you, that's no intention on my side because I went through it. Okay? I'm speaking to myself here. So every time I cling to a narrative, it's because there's something of mother I'm still wanting to learn, or I'm needing to learn in the system of duality. As soon as I push those storylines away and go inside as to what does it mean to me personally, I've just now entered into Father's revelation to heal my shadow. So I can play
Mm-hmm.
all day in duality, or I can bring it back home right at the heart level and say, what's going on in here? Because truthfully, I would like to heal myself so completely that I am manifesting shalom everywhere I go, so that every single person that was within my sphere of influence can feel the peace of the kingdom that is reflecting outside of me, that is the waters of peace instead of the waters of chaos, so that I can bring healing medicine to them because I've become a Sa, one with mother, one with father, married on the inside. I want to bring good medicine by taking it first and becoming it. That's why I don't like to do the external narratives anymore about the Bible stories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a
Yeah.
lot.
So no, that was excellent, and I agree. I agree with everything you said. And this is not a defense here, but just a clarification, for others. But me and you have had talks, and remember, you said that you and Ken aren't necessarily. You don't feel called to kind of bring this to a church setting or church folks. And so what I like to do is learn from y'all. One, what is the deeper internal father teaching in it, and so some of the language I might use, in because I know this isn't going to be the last time of pulling from the English narrative
Oh
and
no.
using it, but
Yeah.
yeah, there has to be a bridge built in between that gap,
Mhm.
of church and the narrative everyone's used to hearing, and the deeper revelation of what's being said. So I just
Yes.
want those that may be true, and that's where we do have to honor and respect everyone on their journey. And I
Yeah.
totally get where you're at, and
Yeah.
totally agree with you in those deeper teachings. But I just want to clarify for other people watching, as that way me and you don't seem like we're maybe trying on two different pages or working against each other, because that's not the case. I'm just trying to bridge the gap.
Absolutely. Totally, totally agree. So a good example of that was like in the beginning when I was talking about Melech to Malacha to Malach. That is a good bridge to bring people over that can still be talked about in the narratives of the Bible of what a king looks like and what an angel looks like and what a queen looks like, and it still can stay within the storylines. That is like a good
Yeah.
bridge to bring revelation through word definition instead of saying, okay, now turn it on the inside. Because what will happen in mother and father's teaching, there's always a bridge, because in the real world, if we were teaching this the way that the structure would be with family life, would be that at the age of 12 and 13, they'd be crossing over to father's teaching. Well, a 12-year-old and 13-year-old can't quite go as deep as someone who's 18, 19, 20, 25, 30. So there has to be a transitory bridge between those two places. And this is where you can take words, just single words, and begin looking at them and excavating them at just the word level, still keeping the
Mm-hmm.
storylines there. And there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. Because what happens, like, and I know that what I can share sometimes is offensive, and I know sometimes I can come across as being maybe not as compassionate, and it's I got a lot of Mars energy. It's just the way this vehicle design is, and I try to be as kind and gentle as I can about it, but I don't really sugarcoat it anymore. But when we get into the deeper things, what happens is it's a natural progression, because I was in the narrative up until like 6 months to a year ago, 6 months ago, probably more like 6 months ago. I was very much still tied to the narrative, and it's just slowly been progressing. But that was like going on, 5.5, 6 years of the language now. Actually, it's 6 years that I've been doing this, and it took me that long to switch over. So my what I would like to do is just keep planting seeds and saying, hey, eventually we are going to be divorcing ourselves from those narratives, because we can't even trust history. Because the
Right.
history doesn't matter. It's right now what you're doing right now. So if you can bring the history and learn from it, change doesn't happen without application. What are the external narratives speaking to you in the moment? It's all about right now. It's all about right now. You can't do a damn thing about tomorrow. You can't do anything about yesterday or history. You can only deal with right now in the minute that we're living, because it's always now, right now.
That's right. That's right. That's so
So
good.
yeah, you and I are definitely not, we're not doing this. It's bridge
No.
building. I'm always bringing it a little bit on that other side because I'm a little bit biased, because I see that the power is, let's take this information to the shadow. Let's take it to the shadow.
Hmm.
Let's get to the root. Let's upend and get those roots out so that we can all begin manifesting as vessels of light and love and bring peace.
Yeah.
And
It's
in
beautiful just
duality,
to
it will
see
do it.
where I, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's beautiful just to see like where I'm at, because other than listening to y'all's teachings and what I've retained from listening to y'all's teachings, like I haven't even begun to really get into the languages with you and your husband yet. Um, that'll happen very soon. But it's how right now I am making it, helping it to make sense by what I know, and so I know at some point, like I said, I'm gonna get to y'all once I can digest and really learn to where I can pick up the Bible and see the Hebrew and the Aramaic and look and do exactly what you do. I'm sure I'm going to get to that point where I'm like, well, I don't even need the narratives because I've moved past the external teachings. Now I've been in Mother's teachings. Now I'm
Yeah.
fully ready to bring it all internal,
Yes.
completely.
Yes. And because you have been listening to the teachings, all Ken and I are doing is sharing what we've discovered. We're not telling anybody anything. I am going to be the last person that says, this is exactly what this says. I mean, sometimes I might say it out of my mouth just because I get excited, because it's my revelation in the moment. The sacred languages are a living language. And what you see is going to be different than what I see, because it's going to be exactly what you need in the moment right now. Right now. You're
Mm-hmm.
what am I drawing towards myself? Because it's spiritual gravity. So there's a spiritual gravity within the letters themselves that are drawing things to you, like you're pulling them into you, and you're seeing exactly what you need for that moment, your next step. Now, somebody else who has just started may not see that way. But when we share, we plant seeds. So if you're seeing the letters and you're seeing the movement and you're hearing the words and you're hearing the definitions, as soon as you jump into it, you're going to realize that you have a reservoir that has already been placed within you that you didn't even realize you had, because now you get to activate it. You get to collaborate with the language of light and love and become it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all we're doing is seed planting. I'm not going to tell anybody that these are definitions, that this is exactly the way it is. This is it. And this is sometimes really unsettling for people, because people want concrete. People want concrete. That's ego. The ego is afraid of anything that might be shifty, because I don't know what to do, because it's so based in fear. So if you're looking to have a translation to be the concrete translation, this is it, I'm going to tell you that's not the case. And I just said tell you,
Yeah.
but it's the truth. It is not the case. That's why the translations came out the way they did, because at the time, this was what they allowed, because this is where they were at when they translated the languages. What you
Yeah.
got and what they put forward, because I'm not even looking at it now that it was an agenda. I don't even want to look at it that anymore. It sometimes slips out of my mouth and I'm like, that's duality, Carrie, stop it. It is the exact amount of light that they had at the time they translated it for where we were at in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not blaming them anymore. I refuse to do that.
Yeah. And we can't, and that's a really hard thing to do. That's why I put in my post, the other day, that I talked to you. The spirit told me several weeks ago, do you really, and that's all there is. And I'm like, yeah. And it said, well, then you have to stop using divisive language in
Yep.
them. There is
No.
only, this is where you were talking about Pharaoh, and we're speaking of the narratives, but where the Father gave me in my post the other day too. And this isn't about me. I'm referring to them because they're, like you said,
It's
a
good.
lot of revelation has been coming through.
Yeah.
Is if we could take every feeling and emotion and everything that we had inside of us and make it its own individualized entity and wrap flesh around it, that's what you're seeing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It is you, which is why Jesus said, don't judge, because with the same measure that you judge another, it's going to be measured back to you. Don't know in your weak and feeble state that they are you.
Exactly. And it's that mirror, right? So what you're
Yeah.
seeing in them is really the reflection for you to see your own wounds, your own shadow. I mean, man, if we could really get a hold of that. I mean, if we could truly get a hold of that, things would be a lot different. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even begin to tell you when I saw that mirror principle, when started acting it out in my life, like literally doing something with it. Because again, change doesn't happen without application. So if you don't do anything with that information, then you're not changing the behavior. In fact, I'm not going to talk long about this, but this is my new read that I'm doing. I'm trying to break away more from electronics. I'm on this computer way too damn much.
Guilty.
Dr. Joe
Oh, wow.
Dispenza. Love this man's work. Love, love, love this man's work. Now, I say that because this is truly transformable information for us. And because what I was seeing, we didn't even get to talk about the fall today, which is fine because I have a whole lot of information about the fall. But today it was good. I like it being spirit led, and maybe we'll see if that's what leads us to the fall next week, because I went through the fall. We'll talk about the Nephilim. We'll talk about the New Testament words for salvation and redemption and all of those things, because they're all connected. But this is nuts and bolts, how to change that which the fall entailed, which was the division from our conscious and our subconsciousness. They became divided. That what we're conscious of and that of the subconscious that we're not conscious of. That's really what the fall entails. And so this book, as I've been reading it, because there's some patterns and things that I need to break in my life. This book is really telling us through neuroplasticity how to rewire ourselves to be able to actually physically know how to do it, instead of it just, oh, I'm going to change my mind. Okay, so what does change your mind mean? This tells you how to change your mind. Because it's lovely to say, well, I'm going to change my mind, or the term repent to change your mind, right? But if there's not
Mm-hmm.
practical application, then we're just giving each other lip service.
That's right.
And I
Yeah.
don't need any more lip service. I want heart change.
No. And I think that's where we're going to be moving into. And I've seen it so much, and it's been my heart's desire. And I know, and I'm just going to speak personally for me right now. And I know this is a collective too, but I know that's why I've been going through uh, I've been going through the things that I have. Is so when people come to me, because I have people that do this all the time. Okay, just like you said, change your mind. But what does that look like? How do you
Exactly.
do it? Because we're taught, just say a prayer, you know. And I have nothing against prayer. I'm not saying don't say a prayer. But what I'm saying is you can't tell your kid, like I can't go to my 12-year-old son and say, he says, well, okay, how do I rebuild that Cummins diesel motor? Well, just go rebuild it, or just pray about it. Like there has to be a practical step. And if we have a good mother, father, creator, then he's given us steps and practical ways of doing it, not just leaving us out there to fend for ourselves. So I would like to eventually get to a point, and I think that's where it's gonna get is with me at least, is these, and I know there's tons, Joe Dispenza, Aaron Abke, Eckhart Tolle, all these great people out there that have developed ways, but not everybody listens to them. And there's only going to be
Right.
people, there's going to
Right.
be certain people that are only going to hear Carrie Husband. There's going to be
Right.
certain people that are only going to hear Brandon Dodd.
Right. Well, again, our frequencies, right? We all have something that we're bringing to the collective. I actually had somebody tell me before that their sister heard me, and every time that she heard my voice, it sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard to her.
Mm.
So, I didn't take offense to it, but she couldn't listen to anything that I was sharing because the tone of my voice or whatever the frequency that I was broadcasting based upon where she was at, that it, she couldn't listen to me. And you're right. There
Yeah.
are people that may not listen to you because maybe the frequency isn't jiving there. But together, what we are bringing together in our pieces, because we're all fractals, is we're bringing it into oneness unity. So this book, Drew Paul said that he's going to be posting the PDF on the Stand 121 Facebook page. For those of you who want to join that community, please come and visit it, and I will ask you a few questions and approve you. But this book is really a way as a practical application for us to get it done. And it has to do with heart brain
Awesome.
coherence work. This is an incredible read. I'm so excited because it gives you hope in practical applications of how to rewire yourself, but also how to create your reality in through this work,
Mm.
so that we can break the habit of being us. Because he goes into a lot of scientific evidence about what our body does and with chemicals and everything else. I'm blown away by this. I'm blown away by this. And in fact, Spirit, it's like Jesse had this and he said, if you want to read it, it might be very helpful. And I'm like, okay, sure, I will. And I started thrumming through it and started reading it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a gold standard. Like everybody should do this if you want to change your life, change things that are happening, change your circumstances, break the habit of being you. So,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to
Cool.
talk
Well,
about anything else other
go.
than something that we wanted to talk about at the end, if we want to release that publicly about what we're thinking about doing in the fall. If you want to talk about that, or I can talk about that, because we've got about 13 more minutes before I need to jump off.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll let you add to it, I guess. But so
Yeah.
what we're thinking of doing, and not everything is written in stone and concrete yet, but we're thinking of having a gathering in Crestone, Colorado, for people that are interested in Carrie and Ken teaching on the sacred languages, just fellowship, being led by the Spirit. I guess how Daniel David would say, if you're vibing with us, and you want to come out and you're able to, we're trying to finalize. I'd like to finalize a head count by
Yes,
the
we
end of
need
this
to.
month.
Yeah.
And that way we know how much space we need, what's available, can we even entertain that many people, depending on how, there's a lot of variables to this. So, but basically it's fellowship. We're going to be going over the sacred languages, people that are interested in the introduction of and learning from Carrie and probably mainly Carrie, but meeting Carrie and Ken and learning the languages, if you're interested in that. And again, just family coming together in fellowship, in one spirit, in unity, in one mind, and just seeing what the Spirit's got, man, and what the Spirit wants to do in that situation. So, is there anything you want to add to that, Carrie?
Well, I just know we're looking at the first week in October. Again, we don't have the concrete dates down. I know Brandon said something about like October 1st through the 8th. Ken and I need to look at our calendars because I know that we're going to be driving. Brandon, I believe you're driving. So, you're coming from the East Coast. We're coming to the West Coast. It won't be as far for us, but, it's still a journey for us to get there. But it is like in the very early stages. Our friend Lou Machado is helping try to locate a place for us. And really, for those of you, I saw Claire's comment. It was funny. I wasn't going to post what she said. It was too funny. If you scroll through it, she's like, well, I won't say it anyway. It's just too funny. But she was hoping that we weren't saying that we were going to have a meeting because she lives in the UK. I totally get it. But I'm also wanting, I know, right? Where's the kid? Yeah, I would love everybody just to be able to zip in and be there. But I'm also wanting to see if we can actually live stream some of it as well. Be able to set it up and have the equipment to be able to live stream. And so we can share things too, so that those of you that can't come can still be a part of it, still can, hear what we're talking about, what we're sharing. And I know it's not quite the same thing as being in the same space with one another. But it is, it's our heart's desire that that's what we can
Hmm.
do. And as many of you that can come would be great, but we do need a head count. We need a head count ASAP.
Yeah.
So yeah, by July 31st, that would be great. So the page, what is it? What did you put it under again? The Creststone, what was it? The Creststone Gathering.
Yeah,
Do you
I
remember?
think it's the Creststone Gathering. But what they can do if they're interested is just shoot me a private message, and then I can add them to the group. And I want
Okay.
to add this: those dates of October the first date are not solidified because there's two
Oh,
people that really want to come, and one lady is the one who actually owns this whole spiritual place that we'll be staying at. And I've been out to Creststone, guys. It's super high energy, very awesome place, man. But they're going out of town, and I don't think that they'll be back until I think maybe October 15th. So that's something me
okay.
and you'll have to talk about privately, Carrie.
Okay.
But they really want to. They really want to be a part of this. And the lady that owns it, she's a shaman. I've met her. She's freaking awesome, man. Just the nicest lady you'd ever meet in the whole world. So again,
Well,
nothing
and
solidified,
maybe,
but we just want that head count.
right, right. Well, maybe that then we need to look at that date, because if because she has ownership of the land and she wants to be there. Excuse me. We're talking about honoring people, then it would probably be right for us to come when she's there so that we can honor her and honor the space that she's been holding through this sacred land, that we could actually begin to be there. And as being a shaman, receiving blessings and whatnot for the work that is being done, because I just have a feeling it's going to be kicking some things off in a really good sense.
Yeah,
I really do. Both Ken and I are feeling this.
yeah. I'm not going to put any kind of expectations on it or anything like that, but I do and feel what I feel like y'all do, and I really feel like it's going to open up some things because this whole Creststone community was designed and intended for this, for spiritual gatherings,
Right.
for people that are. I mean, it's
Right.
that's this whole community is super spiritual in itself, So I don't know how many groups prior from us, but I don't think it's been very many, that has come through. So again, guys, if you're interested, please hit me or Carrie up, and just PM us, and we'll get you added into the group. But we definitely need to have a head count. I would by the end of this month.
Right. Right. I totally agree. So the sooner you can let us know, the better. And again, we don't even know prices wise of what that's going to look like for lodging. We haven't even determined anything yet. I put some questions out the other day about different things that we need to think about, and it's coming up really fast. And I want it to be a blessing for all of us. But it's like the way I describe it is I would love to have controlled spontaneity.
Yeah,
So controlled spontaneity, so that we have a little bit of organization, so that anybody who is choosing to venture there will be leaving feeling blessed, instead of like, oh, that was a cluster.
that's
I
right.
don't like to do that. That's not it. And so we're
Yeah,
needing to jump on it right away. So any of you that are interested,
yeah,
please let us know ASAP. And we can at least get your name, your information down. As we figure it out, you can get into the group, you can see what's going on, you can participate in the planning if you want, if you have some ideas. I mean, we don't want to have, as my dad would say, we don't want to have too many chiefs and not enough engines. That's what he used to always say, and I don't mean that derogatory. It's just that what he used to say when I was growing up, that we need to make sure that we're all being able to collectively work on this together. But there's decisions that have to be made, and of how we're going to make this happen. And if it is successful, we may see into possibly doing this every year, because part of, and
yeah.
no, I'm not creating a new religion. Okay. I'm not doing that. I am not saying that we need to
No,
jump
no.
into Hebrew roots either. What I am saying, that there are principles for gathering in the sacred languages 3 times a year. Now, I'm not saying we're coming together 3 times a year, but I don't see why we can't do virtual retreats 3 times a year, but also have a time at least once a year where we can actually open it up and have a gathering, because it's a celebration of our spiritual journey. And you see it in the name of the feast days, not the ones that were in the book of the law, but the ones that were in the book of the covenant, because they line up with the Hebrew ancient wedding. And the Hebrew ancient wedding is about marrying your divine feminine and your masculine together as one. And it's really beautiful when you see it. And so all the stages are there in the 3 phases of the Hebrew wedding, where we join together as we walk this thing out together. So in becoming one, because you got to become one on the inside before you can manifest it on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. So we definitely would appreciate your input. And,
Yes.
and I'm with you, Carrie, on that. You know, I do want some sort of structure, but I don't want like too much structure. You know, I want the freedom for the spirit to move, but also there does need to be a little structure there, so we're not all running around with chickens with our heads cut off. And yeah, and
organized
and this is that's right. And this is multi-purposed in its reasonings too, you know. So it's not just Mary's thing or anything. It's really Spirit's, it's really Father's thing. It's the Creator's thing. But there are multiple things there, because then if they're coming that far, I want them to be able to present information and bring it forward that they want and what's on their heart. I also want others to be able to speak, and I want to be able to talk about, you know, my journey with the Hopis and my heart for the Native Americans. So if you come, you know, please be patient with us, because this is the first meeting that we're ever having. So I know it might not run, you know, super smooth, but let's hope it does. I'm excited. I'm fired up, man. And I think it's just going to be great, dude. That's going to open a lot of doors in a lot of ways that we can't even expect right now. Don't even know.
I agree. And so we'll have to come with our grace hats on.
Yes. Everybody.
So just make sure you don't forget to pack your grace hat.
That's right.
Because we'll be extending it to one another as we do this, because I mean, it's also short. This is short notice. Now, if we had been planning this and planned it for a year, it would be an entirely different story. But we're only talking a couple months away. Like it's going to be here before we know it. So anyway, we'll go ahead and keep you informed. Go to the page. Actually, like I said, hit Brandon and I up on our Facebook private message. We'll get you to the link so you can join in, see what's going on. It's very interesting because we have Michael giving us updates with the Hopi. I'm really appreciating that. And there's just some amazing stuff going on. It's just incredible, amazing stuff. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, I enjoyed. I wish we could have gone into some of the other stuff, but I really like what we talked about today. I think it was some really good stuff. So thank you for your transparency, Brandon. Thank you for accepting my apology and extending me grace as I'm still doing my shadow stuff. And I look forward to us sharing again next week. And hopefully you're feeling encouraged today.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling better than I was. So it was needed, and Spirit knew it. That's why you didn't read my message, because if you read it, we probably wouldn't have done it. And I just want to thank all you guys in the chat, man, and how much love y'all are showing towards each other and everything too. I saw some comments in there and saw y'all working through that. So like, I just appreciate it. That's what it's about, man. We can't hold bitterness and hostility and anger or none of that in us. You know, we can't do that. I love you guys so much.
Yep, we just let it roll. Just let it roll, because I know you guys, we can all figure our stuff out. And thank you, Drew Paul. Toda Rabah to you as well. I appreciate you guys being here. So in 30 minutes, if you guys want to join, I will go ahead and have on the description box of this live stream, you can go back in, and I will have the Zoom information if you want to join in at the 1 o'clock meeting as we start diving more into scripture today. It's some good stuff as to why parables are being used. And there's some really amazing information that we will be talking about today. And we'll just have some real time as well. So if you decide to be on the Zoom meeting, make sure that you're open and transparent. I think Brandon and I showed that and demonstrated that today, because this is what allows us to build trust with one another, which we desperately need. in this day and age. And if you choose to stay anonymous, you can pop on over and watch it on YouTube. We will have somebody monitoring comments on there, and you can still be active. But if you're going to be in the Zoom meeting, I please ask you to be open and transparent. So no anonymity. Anyway, because
Yeah.
we're showing our hearts.
Awesome.
We're making ourselves vulnerable.
That's right.
Anyway,
That's right.
we love you guys. Thank you,
So
Brandon.
cool.
I love you very much. Thank you for sharing like you did today. And if you still need anything, just hit me up on private message. I'm here for you.
Cool. I appreciate that. I love you guys, man. Namaste.
Namaste. Oh, and by the way, Ken might be joining us at our 1:00 meeting too. Just letting you know, he might be popping in too. So if you guys want to hear from
Awesome.
Ken, he'll be here. Yeah. All right. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.
Namaste, guys.